Welcome back to Post Status Draft. We're doing a new series called The Product People, basically, where we're talking to the people actually driving the product at all these great companies. And one of our first to do this is my friend Robert Jacobi, who leads WordPress endeavors over there. And I'll let him actually share in just a second what he actually does in his actual title, Robert. But I've known Robert for a couple of years now, and hearing some of his backstory, I'm excited for this because, I mean, he's had a wealth of experience, not just in WordPress, but before that, other communities and agency work. And so today, the purpose of this, the intention of these interviews is really to say, there's all these cool products out there in the WordPress space, but let's talk to the people driving the vision, the roadmaps, the work that gets done for the people buying those products. So I want to give I personally, Robert, like the human angle. I don't like to just buy from a button. I want to buy from a human. Ultimately, no, there's people out there. I give the example a lot of like Tom Bin Bags, and now Tom has actually exited that business. But I was like, you get to hear the story. You get to hear his background, and talk about how he designed this particular backpack. But anyway, Robert, thanks for coming on to the Draft Podcast, talking about the product and what you're doing at Cloudways. But would you give us a little background about yourself, how you got into it, let's start with what you actually do at Cloudways, what you're responsible for, and then I'll ask how you got there.
Okay, so we'll tease it out backwards. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for having me here, Cory. I love Post Status, love you and your family. Really thrilled to be here. So my title, which titles don't mean anything, but is Director of WordPress at Cloudways. It's a fancy way of saying strategy, partnerships, product, marketing, community. So that's
all the above.
All the above, and probably things I'm missing.
And those that know you well know that's very fitting. All the things were in one hat, and Director of WordPress. I love it.
But yeah, I guess I could say it's been like a 20-year journey to get here. I've been at Cloudways for about a year and a half, actually just over, but started in open source decades ago. Boy, that makes it sound so long. Years ago, just years ago. And built an agency around initially Java, but then actually Joomla, the content management system, and focused on that aspect of implementing backend work with Joomla, open source, connecting up to all that fun open source stuff, which actually led me to being a leader of the project for a little bit in the late 2010s.
That's the part that I really appreciate. One of the many things about your story is like you were in this very big community called Joomla, and I've told you my story. It was in 2006 when we were retooling our organization's website I was working at the time, and one of the developers mentioned Joomla, and Joomla's still around. Joomla's still there, and I think still with the open web conversation serves a vital interest. But you really were like in that inner circle of community, helping lead and drive that project for a long time. And I know I bounced things off you over time because now we have this WordPress thing, and I know Drupal is even set up differently too from a governance standpoint. And getting your feedback and the pros and cons and strengths and weaknesses of those, with all that say, like I still am a cheerleader for Joomla because I think it works for a lot of people in a lot of settings. But I think there's lessons that you have from that experience that I know I've appreciated hearing your thoughts on WordPress specifically.
Oh my gosh. Well, we don't have 17 hours to go over that, but
yeah, exactly. We'll save that one for another one.
Yeah.
But
three very differently run organizations, each successful in the way they want to be successful. So that's what actually makes it interesting, that the way you run an organization can helps you define what success is, and then you can actually focus on it more.
Yeah. And the other part of the background for you too is running your own agency. So like when you're building product there, I love highlighting this because you were the user for a lot of companies, including Cloudways product stuff, that I think is really helps you build a more intuitive product too. But I know from years running your own agency, like you come in from the people doing the work out there that always don't get showcased as well in WordPress and post ads specifically. But I think that's another angle, is like, you've been there, you've earned your stripes as an agency owner.
Thank you. And I just, whenever I think that far back, I think of when we had our servers in a closet, hosting customers, way back then.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Now you're dating yourself.
And how I don't miss that.
So then fast forward. Okay. So there was this time where I know you stepped into the WordPress community. This was before Cloudways.
Yep.
Can you share a little bit about that and why you chose to step into the WordPress community?
Sure. After I kind of rolled out of the agency, I started looking for just something new to do, for lack of a better term or phrase, and joined the executive team at Perfect Dashboard, which was a company that built a automatic updating tool for WordPress. That was acquired by WP Engine at the beginning of 2019. And then I just focused on, in a lot of ways, helping the open source community understand what businesses needed, but even more importantly, for businesses to let them know how open source communities work. And it's not just about, you can throw, millions of dollars at something and everyone's going to love you. There's a lot of, get to know the people, get engaged, be a part of everything from a WordCamp, to a Joomla day, to, whatever the open source project is. But, you need to have skin in the game to be taken seriously by a lot of people who have spent hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of hours within those open source communities.
Well, I'm thankful you took the step into the WordPress community. And then, so fast forward, you got the gig at Cloudways. You all have had a lot of new things coming out from a product standpoint, and then also new news coming out from a company standpoint, and that you were acquired by DigitalOcean, or August, September, I want to say.
It was beginning of September was, when we closed there. It's been 2022, so it's technically our 10-year anniversary. And unfortunately, we've had like no time to celebrate it. It's been busy as can be. The opening up of the world post COVID, depending how you look at it. So lots of travel, lots of events, a lot of meeting folks. Partnership with Cloudflare. We announced safe updates. And then of course the DigitalOcean acquisition. So this 1 year is, we feel like we've done 10 years of work in 1 year for our 10th anniversary.
That's how it goes. I was similar to mine with iThemes. We had just celebrated our 10th anniversary and we were acquired. Okay, so let's talk about WordPress as it relates to Cloudways. So this is what you lead, that particular product. Tell us about the product at Cloudways specific to WordPress.
So we actually have a number of WordPress products, so I guess to put it that way. The goal of Cloudways is to it's a managed cloud, hosting solution, and we can all blah 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 about managed hosting, and I will, don't worry. But one of the things we focused on was just making it one click easy. So we really want to enable folks who have 1, 10, 100 sites to just be able to get on there, either start from scratch with sort of a more Cloudways adapted version of WordPress. It's totally WordPress. We just make sure that caching and things are turned on the way you might want it, or just sort of like naked WordPress, so nothing's tweaked at all. WooCommerce, of course, and then we have some bundles around other packages and products to just make it again one click easy. Lots of folks can do one click easy WordPress. What we focused on the whole time is how do you get that WordPress site cloud enabled? And yes, you can go to a shared hosting site and say, I want a WordPress install, but there's a lot more work behind the scenes. We want our end users to feel like, yes, it's just the same thing, but behind the scenes, you're on a very scalable, high performance, secure infrastructure.
So when someone's looking out there, building a website or launching a project, and they go, hey, I want the scale of cloud with the easiness, not having to kind of go through and tinker with settings and things like that and me, I'm not very technical, but from the cloud is awesome in this dream, and that you can scale and do all these kinds of things, but there's work in between that needs to happen to help get WordPress ready. Is that where kind of Cloudways kind of comes in?
Without a doubt. I mean, if you go to any of them, so obviously we're now owned by DigitalOcean, but DigitalOcean, AWS, GCP, so that's Google Cloud, Linode, Vultr, all these platforms are much more tech focused. So you can do a lot of really cool stuff on any of these platforms, like really dive deep in. You get root, you can do, all kinds of crazy tech voodoo, and you have fantastic platforms and applications out there on that. But boy, if you just want to get WordPress going, that is a pain in the rear. We used to work with AWS and Azure back in the agency days, and oh man, just to get stuff going, you need that certification, or you're going to misconfigure something, or even worse, you're going to misbuild the Jesus out of yourself, and what you thought was going to be a $50 bill for the month, all of a sudden is like $500 or $1,000 because you left something on that you weren't supposed to, and you didn't know that it was going to be metered and billed out in such and such a way, or some database process went crazy or haywire. So we try to get rid of that risk at Cloudways and just mitigate that, so you can be like, oh, I am on DigitalOcean and I don't need to worry about any of this stuff. I'm paying a monthly fee. I'm not going to get surprised with anything. Really just kind of making it what, a lot of shared hosting used to be back in the day, but without all the performance bottlenecks.
Mm-hmm. Now, okay, you mentioned Cloudways is 10 years old. And so I been around for a long time. And I know this predates you at the company, but when did the WordPress specific offerings start to come into the Cloudways history and product lineup?
We started out as actually a Magento shop. That was our first big offering. That was sort of cloud enabled as we look at it. I think within, if memory serves, about 3 years, 2 to 3 years, we had put together our WordPress packages to be able to deploy across cloud providers. Okay.
So when you think about the product, that we talked about this big problem, and I love your phrase there, cloud enabled. So who do you find in your customer community that, just goes, okay, this is exactly what we need for what we're doing? Are there some common kind of avatars and customer journeys you see most often?
First and foremost, our best customers are agencies, because it's really easy to manage, the costs of having a ton of clients on your infrastructure. I mean, the flexibility is, yes, I can have a DigitalOcean droplet for 100 sites if they're all, small, simple brochure sites, and that's costing you $10 a month, plus or minus. I can't remember the exact. Maybe it's $10.99. Mm-hmm. A month to host as many sites as that droplet can handle, or you can scale the heck out of it and have a super e-commerce site that's got 300 plus concurrent users and chugging away on its own droplet. So you can mix and match across the platform, not even just with one cloud provider, but across multiple providers. Because some folks do have that AWS expert in-house or as a contractor, and they do want to tweak some things to the best of their ability. Again, it's managed, so we don't let them blow up everything, but we have use cases where there's front-end stuff that's quickly being handled by DigitalOcean, and then there's some crazy back-end batch processing that's happening on a super high performant AWS EC2 instance.
So diversity of the projects within an agency, like you said, brochure, where all the way to something that scales bigger in one place where you can kind of manage all those. That's pretty compelling.
I wish I would have had that 20 years ago.
Right.
Building up a staging and deployment server and a production server and all that fun stuff.
And managing all that cloud complexity too. For sure. So what are some of the examples, like you mentioned e-commerce, and I know WooCommerce is something that a lot of your customers do and use the platform for. Can you give us some more like niche down examples too of, and it doesn't have to be by name, of course, but like what you're seeing in the community at Cloudways? You've got, is WooCommerce something that comes up quite a bit? Is obviously WordPress too, but what are some of those niche down, journeys that you see in the community too?
Well, it's e-commerce across the board. So just to jump back slightly on the sort of the audiences we have at Cloudways,
Yeah.
We focus on SMBs. I mean, that is, the crux of our mission, the crux of our joy. Our motto's always been moving dreams forward, but it's also, how do we accelerate that opportunity for our customers? And it's almost easiest to see in the SMB space because you can do a few little things and performance increases, trust increases, our customers are happy, and that kind of is a flywheel of, I want to say a flywheel of joy, patent pending. But a lot of it's on the e-commerce side. So pretty much every site on the web these days has some kind of e-commerce component. However you want to monetize it, whether that's through ad traffic or actually running a store. We focus a lot on WooCommerce because it's a great platform. It's an open source e-commerce platform. It's hard to name many of those, and there's a lot of flexibility with what you can do with it. And so people want to spin up a shop. No, we're not Shopify. You're not going to be able to just start dragging and dropping. But when you're looking at, do I want to be locked into a system where, I don't have all the control that I need for my site, that I might be locked in on data. I might not be able to move or migrate or all that kind of stuff. We certainly believe that WooCommerce is the way to go. We just had a WooCommerce speed challenge. We like to engage with the WooCommerce community, with other users of WooCommerce. It's I've always loved open source. It's the communities drive satisfaction, which makes it exciting to evolve with customers. And because it's open source, you can do a lot of stuff to quickly take in that feedback.
So drilling down to the products, the offerings that you have too, what are some of the, we could just say it as, what are the kind of features, the core parts of the products that you're really most proud of and that you see people really like maxing out to the furthest they can with the actual products?
I love having staging that's always there and one click ready. I think that's great. It should be everywhere. We get you going with that right away. One click to be able to migrate across cloud platforms, I think is amazing. I don't know where else you can just sit there and go, oh, I don't need Google anymore. I just want to put this over on DigitalOcean. Yeah, you can do that, and you can go back and forth all day long. It's a unique, for me, cool factor to be able to take advantage of, how different platforms run, and the value. Some of are obviously going to cost more, and maybe there's value. Maybe there's you had the value, you don't need that type of expensive performance, so you can easily ratchet down as well. So that's cool. A lot of just good things around optimizing and securing WordPress, from how we implement Cloudflare, how our safe updates work, which is sort of that very similar to what I did back in the Perfect Dashboard days, automatic WordPress and plugin updates. Getting those basics in line is critical. So I really like that those work, and you don't want to worry about that as a customer. You want to worry about the cool stuff, or what's my next product going to be, or how am I going to launch a Black Friday, Cyber Monday campaign. You don't want to be worried about is my site going to get jammed up? Is it going to get hacked? Is it going to just flub around?
Yeah, back to the one click across the platforms. That's seems like a compelling feature, specifically for agencies who go, okay, I'm not getting what I want here, and being able to do a one click migration. That's outstanding.
It's really cool. It's that value proposition got me hook, line, and sinker when I first started working at Cloudways.
Yeah, I remember we had an AWS, part of our SaaS solution at iThemes, and that bill, initially the prices seem really awesome until you do it on scale, and then you're like, just that being able to move that and migrate to different, cloud solutions, I think would be great from a price standpoint, if anything. But I'm sure there's other compelling reasons to do that, like if you're not the right solution isn't there. But do you see other paths why people would go, okay, I'm going to use this one click to go over here? Do you see that quite a bit too?
A lot of times just the needs have changed. So it's, either I need to ramp up what I have at DigitalOcean, or ramp down from something that I thought that started off strong, but now it's going, but we really just don't need that. So we don't need whatever GCP may be offering, and then ramp it down to maybe a high-end DigitalOcean server, but you're still Droplet, I should say, but you're still saving 50% off of what you were paying before. And we keep a big eye on the value propositions, especially in our fun, ever-changing economy. And we're seeing a lot of people take the time to evaluate what they have provisioned for themselves, whether that's at Cloudways or another provider, and spend a week or two doing the math and being like, what, we can get the same kind of performance, at Cloudways or somewhere else. But people are actually finally looking at those infrastructure costs, I think, a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, and when you said the needs part, I thought it seems like a graduation. Okay, this served me for this season of time for whatever I'm doing. Now I'm graduating to a different offering. And then even though Cloudways is owned by DigitalOcean, I know you have all those.
Yeah.
And I've heard the plan is to continue to have those options so that being able to pick where you're at with that kind of ease, because a lot in the hosting. Now I go way back here, but like in the problem with hosting was typically you can't move. It's hard to move. It's easy to get in, hard to get out. And so now with those options out there, you can graduate on when you have needs change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we support DigitalOcean, Linode, Vultr, GCP, and AWS. And yes, you're on top of Cloudways doing that, but of course we're launching open source applications. So yes, you can even move off of Cloudways very easily. I mean, that kind of, I think that idea of hosted lock-in is it's never going to leave, because you can make a lot of money if you get the right bit of traction initially. I mean, you obviously can look at the Wixes of the world, but I think people are only satisfied for so long with that until they realize that there are a lot of stumbling blocks to doing what you want, and having flexibility, freedom, scalability are much more important than just being able to do a little bit of drag and drop. And frankly, I'm going to keep rolling on this. Open source keeps improving. I don't want those guys to disappear, because it's great to keep open source projects on their toes. Like they're finding niches in the market which are critical, important, and relevant, and users are going to them. So I think that's a great challenge for open source projects to evaluate what's going on there and being like, okay, that's something we should add in. We should add in blocks, for example, and we can have a block editor, and we can have, oh my gosh, they just changed the name. What's FSC being called now? Just site editor. It's not
Site editor. Yeah.
Site editor.
Okay, so we've been talking about some of the product solutions, in particular, like the one-click staging. Anything else before I ask about, how you're seeing users in your community make the most of it? What the ones that are going, okay, they're taking the most advantage of what we designed this for. Anything else before we get to that?
I think folks should, I touched on it just a moment ago, take a look at your infrastructure, see what you're paying for, see if that's providing the value. And Cloudways may not be the right fit, and that's okay. Because if there is a right fit somewhere else, you should always go with the right fit. But take the time, and I think this year especially is a good time to, just kind of go through that. Are you really getting the value out of what you're paying for? And maybe you're paying too little and getting too little and not even realizing it, because you haven't done the homework of maybe running a couple of speed tests and realizing that, wow, my site actually takes 5+ seconds to load. It's just really fast because it's always cached in my own browser because I'm checking it every morning. So, little things like that can make a huge difference in, in SEO, in sales, and just friendliness for web visitors. People just are impatient on the internet.
I like that. So the two themes I'm hearing is value, being able to assess, hey, is this the right solution? Are we getting the right value? Are we spending too much? Whatever that is. And the other side of it, which is need. Okay, are we getting what we need from that platform? We'd rather, hey, we've been looking at this different option. And those are two that kind of funnel into what you all built at Cloudways.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So now how to get the most out of the product that you all have built at Cloudways. So what are the ways you see in the community, or the ways you even think from the product perspective? You're like, I just wish people would do this, and that, or whatever that is. I built products for a long time, or at least led product teams that built the work. And you're always like, we built that so you would do this, but they miss it. Or gosh, we spend for us, it was like we spent every day thinking about the product and the problem and the solution. And then people get it and you're like, they're using like 5% of it. What sticks out in your mind from that standpoint? People that are really using it for all it's worth, or also the ones that go, oh, I wish they'd just do these two things, or whatever that is, in terms of making the most of what you and your team have built.
So for the technically inclined companies, I really wish they would use our API more. We have an agency partner that very geeky on the inside, so it was great. They jumped on a Cloudways and they said, "Oh, you guys have this API?" We're like, "Yeah." And they're, "Well, can we do X, Y, and Z with it?" We're like, "Yes." So they are literally they've created their whole, to mention a competitor, they've created their own like Pantheon-esque instance of Cloudways. So all their deployments, whether it's for existing projects or new projects, from dev to staging to production, it's all done with scripts on their side of the universe, and they can do very complicated integrations of new code and whatnot across their stack, and it's all on Cloudways on a bunch of droplets, and it's brilliant. It's actually my favorite use case for Cloudways, and I really wish more people will take a look at the API and realize how powerful it is to really be able to spin up what you want when you need it.
Dig that. So not being technical minded, but how do you talk to those agencies? If I put on that hat and you talk to me for a second, you're like, hey, here's some ways, but that seems like, for instance, on an API perspective, is customize it for your unique need. This is that last percentage where you're like, we're never going to be able to do these things, but we can put the API out here that allows those kind of customizations. Anything
Exactly.
specifically
Yeah, I mean, every company is, I guess, engineering, what's the word? Oh boy, engineering resource constrained these days. So while there's a ton of cool stuff we like to do, some of it's going to be edge cases. So we just want to be able to say, hey, let us help you walk through this. We'll guide you through any questions you have, and then run with it. It's full tested in production API. It's the API we use. So it's not like, if we find something wrong with it, we're the first ones to know.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, API, big one. Make use of that. Anything else stand out to you?
On sort of the almost new user aspect, I would like people to understand the variety of applications they can actually deploy. So yes, I'm always going to have my Cloudways WordPress hat on, but if you're working in Laravel, and or other custom PHP stuff, you can still deploy those applications with one click, or at least the framework with one click, and be ready to go on on one or more servers. So being able to just take advantage of that pretty quickly, or ask questions about that. We're always interested in people's opinions and questions and suggestions. I mean, we literally had a suggestion come over the wire this morning, which was like, duh, why haven't we done that? Okay, because sometimes you just get myopic on, you're sitting in your cubicle, and what's a cubicle? I think we don't use those anymore. But you know too much about your product, and you just make assumptions, and that's always tricky to get people internally to be like, oh yeah, of course, duh. So
Well, as I talk to agencies,
ask questions more, reach out to us, good, bad, or ugly. That's always one of those things. Feedback's never useless. It can just be sometimes interesting.
and that's an advantage of having Robert in Slack as well. So you can hit up Robert in Slack too and give some feedback or ask some questions too, or he can point you in the right direction. But what I heard from you too is that it's, even though you are passionate about WordPress at Cloudways is passionate about WordPress, it's not just WordPress. And I talk to a lot of agency owners, particularly in our community, and it's interesting because I too have just worn the WordPress hat for years, and it's refreshing to hear what all these agencies are doing. But it's not just where there's a lot of tools out there that they might go. I talked to one last week, and they're doing API development with like dairy farmers and things like that. But so what I hear you saying too is like, even though we're having a WordPress conversation related to Cloudways, it's not just Cloudways. You can do other things with it.
Oh, for sure. And I'll put my agency hat back on. And, we were a Joomla shop. Easily 50% of the work we did was not Joomla, direct. It was maybe tied into it, but there were custom applications, maybe some kind of server architecture that we were building out, crazy database thing. Joomla was a part of it, but then we needed to have other environments to support whatever other platforms we were integrating with.
Gotcha. All right. Anything else on the making the most part? Things you wish people knew about or did? Before we start talking about, I want to get your takes on the future, where WordPress is too, and technology and vision and values and things like that. But anything else on the making the most part that you want to mention?
APIs, reaching out, play with all the tools we have. A lot of, sometimes people just do that one click and, skip over some of the, interesting features that are already available to them. We have different types of caching that are already available. Yes, it gets a little more geeky and you have to know what you're doing. So yes, but I mean, you can go all the way up to, sort of enterprise-esque Cloudflare, and, that's pretty cool.
I should have asked this earlier, but it seems like a lot of the customers you have, or at least the contact points with Cloudways, or they're using the platform, might be more developer, technical minded people too. So so that really speaks to them in the sense of get in there and play around. They might not, okay, I'm thinking solution and I just need this fixed, but there's also other things that they can get in, explore. Anything, particularly if we put on that developer and agency type role, and like, what else would you say to them?
Well, a lot of that developer-centric nature comes from being a completely self-service, provider for a long time. We're expanding how we reach out, how we communicate, how we expose offerings, but make sure you use, a lot of the basics. Make sure you're using the staging environments that are already there. They're not going to cost anything extra. Take advantage of evaluating potentially different servers, or how you load up on droplets or something like that. You may find that one application is really kind of impacting. That's the word I want to look for. Sometimes it's hard to find these 7-letter words. Impacting other applications where you didn't never thought about it before, but you can actually tell now the difference. And so, yeah, move that over to another, add an extra droplet into the mix, and also play around with how you might split up that architecture. Again, I get geeky on this, but
No, geeky.
We we have a customer that, put their entire database on a really high performant droplet, because that was getting hammered all the time by the type of applications that they were running. But their front end wasn't really that busy, so they could, put multiple versions and variations of that front end on a much more cost efficient, value-based package. So you can do cool things like that without having to go crazy and worry about, third party, database as a service things. I mean, it's already there. So you can kind of take advantage of that.
All right, get in, look around the API, and you play with the tools. Okay, thanks for that, Robert. Now let's talk about, I want the part that I can talk better about is where is WordPress now in the open web, in the web in general? Where's it positioned? What are you seeing in WordPress? What are you excited about with WordPress as we kind of move forward and continue to help democratize publishing?
Well, WordPress is the de facto content management system platform right now. I don't think there's any way, just by the sheer volume, the ubiquity, the types of traffic. There are probably 100 million people on a WordPress site right now. They don't even realize it. So there's a ubiquity to it. That's not going to disappear overnight. My assumption is it'll continue growing. There are a lot of things that have been done right with WordPress. There's a lot of, quarreling, quabbling, squabbling, sometimes about how things get deployed and rolled out. But on the whole, for a community-driven project, it's pretty amazing, how far it's come, how far it's going to go, and the breadth of adoption. Is it the easiest thing in the universe to use? No, but it's not the hardest. Is it the most flexible thing? It's up there. I mean, there may be things, if you really want to just hand code everything from scratch, I guess that's the most flexible. But this allows a level of consistency, comfort. I know it's not a word we typically use with open source projects, but I can go from one WordPress site to another for completely different applications. And there's a comfort in knowing where all the pieces are, and that there's documentation and training and all these things that help continue to grow an ecosystem, so that at some point everyone knows at least enough about WordPress to be dangerous, and people can build careers and companies out of it quite easily.
Absolutely. Is there anything about in the project too that's getting you excited, whether it's a particular market it's able to really crush, or not crush in a good way, really expand into? And I think of enterprise here, so I'm baiting you on that. But also specific features. We got Gutenberg, the code editor always, or the block editor always. We've got site editor coming out now, changed from full site editing. But anything that you're excited about specifically related to the project that it's doing?
I think there's small stuff being done, and you kind of lob the pitch at me to get enterprise just sort of happy. I mean, there's a lot of performance work being done all the time on WordPress. There's WordPress learnings now. I mean, these are the things the enterprise cares about. They want to be performant, they want to be secure, and they want to know that there's a knowledge repository that they can go back to either for reference or for training their workers, or being able to evaluate their workers against, or contractors, vendors, or whatnot. That kind of that's risk mitigation. And the enterprise cares about mitigating this kind of risk. And that's why open source had such a hard time in the beginning, and new projects have such a hard time getting traction. There's a lot of risk. Who's running the project? Are they awake? What happens if something is horribly broken? What if there's a core vulnerability that destroys everything? These corporations the enterprise does not want to worry about those things. They do, but let's not make it even scarier than it already is for them. And I think what the project has done very well is try to cover some of these aspects and provide that faith and security.
Yeah, I have no enterprise experience, but I love that WordPress seems to be really doing well on the enterprise. I hear from a lot of marketing types in those companies that love WordPress because it's faster, cheaper, and we can actually make site changes. on the site. Like they can actually use Gutenberg block editor to roll out things. And that's exciting for me. I came in from more the, here's your $80 theme, but to see WordPress really start to take a lot of ground up there and help a lot of people, particularly at the enterprise, is exciting. Talking with a lot of our agency owners, same thing. Is like, that was music to my ears. That's what you want to hear WordPress is doing. Is continue to grow into new markets and help with that expansion of the open web.
And even things like headless. I mean, so again, you have all that consistency and reliability from core WordPress, but now I can just spit out my whole site via APIs. I mean, you could always kind of do that, but now it just gets better and more robust. And again, mitigates risk by being able to have the worker stuff on one end and then sort of the display part on the other end.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for that. Anything else you're excited about? The work you're doing at Cloudways, the work in WordPress, anything else that we left out that you want to share?
Oh, there's so many things I'd love to share. It's a busy, good time for WordPress. I know that there's a lot of concern about in the tech market about what's going on with this or what's going on with that. One of the amazing things about successful open source projects is that the opportunities exist. I mean, if you're a Linux geek, there are so many millions of opportunities. If you're a WordPress developer, implementer, editor, content creator, those opportunities are all over the place, and it's nice from just working in this space now that this is not just a one-trick pony. This isn't some kind of project which may be fantastic or may just drop dead tomorrow. WordPress is it's solid, and we should really take an immense amount of pleasure in the fact that it's solid. Yes, we're not getting things always done as quickly, or can't make everyone happy, but that's not the worst problem to have in the universe. It's the project and the platform is flexible enough to accommodate third-party solutions that can integrate with WordPress. Why not? And that kind of stability helps everyone from the enterprise on down.
Yeah, that's a good way to end it. Well, thank you, my friend Robert, and also to Cloudways for continuing to support the business of WordPress at Post Status. And I love what you're doing over there. Keep it up and keep sharing what you and your team are doing. Will you and the team, where will you be next? I know WordCamps are coming around, but where will you be next?
Yeah, depending when this gets pushed out, there's a DigitalOcean Deploy conference, virtual conference that'll probably pass by the time this airs. Recurring Revenue Summit, all the Black Friday, Cyber Monday madness that we are already kicking off. I think that'll finish out the year. I think we'll all take a needed break for at least a week or two at the end of December.
Break and kick into 2023. Well, thanks, Robert, again. We appreciate you sharing the story and what you're doing with the WordPress product specifically over at Cloudways. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks so much, Cory.